What if I told you there's a food sitting in kitchens around the world that can last for decades, centuries, or even thousands of years without spoiling? It sounds impossible. Most foods eventually go bad. Milk spoils, bread gets moldy, fruit rots, meat decomposes. But honey is different. In fact, archaeologists have discovered jars of honey in ancient tombs that were still remarkably well preserved after thousands of years. How can a natural food survive longer than almost anything else we eat? Is honey really immortal, or is there some hidden science behind this incredible mystery? Today, we're uncovering one of the most fascinating secrets in the food world. Welcome to Consumer's Choice Top 5, where we explore the surprising stories, hidden science, and amazing facts behind everyday foods and products. Today, we're diving into the mystery of honey and discovering why it never spoils. Before we get started, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments. Have you ever found an old jar of honey in your pantry and wondered if it was still safe to eat? We'd love to hear your answer. Let's start with the most important question. Does honey really never spoil? The short answer is yes, but there is more to the story. Pure honey has an incredibly long shelf life. Under the right conditions, it can remain edible for an extremely long time. That's not because honey is filled with artificial preservatives. It's not because manufacturers add special chemicals. The secret comes from honey's natural composition. To understand why honey lasts so long, we first need to understand how honey is made. Honey begins with flowers. Bees collect nectar from flowering plants and carry it back to the hive. Along the way, something remarkable happens. The bees mix the nectar with special enzymes inside their bodies. These enzymes start changing the nectar's chemical structure. When the bees return to the hive, they pass the nectar to other worker bees. The process continues until the nectar becomes thicker and more concentrated. The bees then store it in honeycomb cells and use their wings to create airflow. This helps remove water from the liquid. The result is the golden substance we know as honey. Now here's where things get interesting. Most bacteria and microorganisms need water to survive and multiply. Honey contains very little available water. In fact, honey is mostly sugar and contains a surprisingly low amount of moisture compared to many other foods. Imagine trying to survive in a desert with almost no water. That's essentially what bacteria experience when they encounter honey. The environment is simply too dry for most microbes to thrive. This low moisture content is one of the biggest reasons honey lasts so long. But that's only part of the story. Honey also has a very high sugar concentration. At first glance, that might sound unhealthy, but from a preservation standpoint, it's incredibly important. The dense sugar content creates something scientists call osmotic pressure. In simple terms, the sugar pulls moisture away from microorganisms. Without enough water, bacteria struggle to survive. Think about what happens when salt is used to preserve food. Salt draws out moisture. Honey works in a somewhat similar way, except it uses sugar instead of salt. This means honey creates a hostile environment for many of the organisms that normally cause food spoilage. If that wasn't impressive enough, honey has another trick up its sleeve. Honey is naturally acidic. Most harmful bacteria prefer environments that are closer to neutral. Honey typically has a pH level that is acidic enough to make life difficult for many microorganisms. In other words, bacteria entering honey face multiple challenges at once. There isn't much water. The sugar concentration is extremely high. The environment is acidic. It's almost like trying to survive in a place designed specifically to keep you out. And amazingly, there is still another layer to the mystery. When bees make honey, the enzymes they add create small amounts of hydrogen peroxide. You may recognize hydrogen peroxide as a common antiseptic used to clean minor cuts and scrapes. The levels in honey are much lower, but they still contribute to honey's ability to resist spoilage. So let's recap what we've learned so far. Honey is low in water, high in sugar, naturally acidic, and contains compounds that help inhibit microbial growth. Individually, each of these factors would help preserve food. Together, they create one of the most stable natural foods on Earth. This explains why honey can remain edible for incredibly long periods. But what about those famous stories of ancient honey? One of the most fascinating examples comes from ancient Egypt. Archaeologists exploring tombs discovered sealed containers of honey that were thousands of years old. While opinions differ regarding how edible every sample remained, many were found to be remarkably well preserved. Think about that for a moment. Entire civilizations rose and fell. Kingdoms disappeared. Languages changed. Yet jars of honey survived. That fact alone has fascinated scientists, historians, and food lovers for generations. Now you might be wondering whether the honey sitting in your kitchen can really last that long. The answer depends on how it's stored. Pure honey performs best when kept in a sealed container. If moisture enters the jar, the situation changes. Remember, honey's preservation power comes partly from its low water content. When excess moisture gets inside, yeast can begin growing and fermentation can occur. That doesn't necessarily mean the honey becomes dangerous, but it can affect the taste, texture, and quality. This is why proper storage matters. Keep honey tightly sealed. Store it in a cool, dry location. Avoid introducing water into the container with wet spoons or utensils. Follow these simple steps, and your honey can stay in excellent condition for a very long time. Here's something that confuses many people. Have you ever opened a jar of honey and found that it turned cloudy, thick, or grainy? Many people immediately assume the honey has gone bad. In reality, that's usually not the case. This process is called crystallization. Crystallization is one of the most common changes that occur in honey over time. Certain natural sugars begin forming crystals, causing the honey to become thicker or grainier. The important thing to understand is that crystallized honey is generally still perfectly fine. In fact, many people actually prefer its texture. If you want to return it to a smoother consistency, you can place the container in warm water and gently heat it. The crystals often dissolve back into the liquid. This means one of the most common signs people interpret as spoilage isn't usually spoilage at all. Let me ask you a question. Before watching this video, would you have thrown away a jar of crystallized honey? Many people would. If that's you, let us know in the comments. Now let's address another common myth. Some people believe all honey is identical. That's far from the truth. The flavor, color, aroma, and characteristics of honey depend heavily on the flowers the bees visit. Honey produced from orange blossoms can taste very different from honey produced from clover, wildflowers, eucalyptus, or other plants. This variety is one reason honey remains so fascinating. 2 jars of honey can look similar while tasting completely different. Another interesting fact is that honey has been valued by humans for thousands of years. Long before modern sweeteners existed, people treasured honey as a source of sweetness, energy, and flavor. Ancient civilizations used honey in food, beverages, religious ceremonies, and traditional remedies. Its unique properties helped it become one of the most respected foods in human history. Even today, despite the availability of countless sweeteners, honey remains incredibly popular. Part of that popularity comes from its natural image. Part comes from its flavor. But part also comes from the mystery we've been discussing throughout this video. People are fascinated by foods that break the rules. Most foods spoil. Honey doesn't. Most foods require preservatives. Honey is its own preservative. Most foods have a relatively short shelf life. Honey can potentially outlast generations. That's remarkable. Now let's clear up an important misconception. When people say honey never spoils, they are usually referring to pure honey stored properly. Honey products that contain additional ingredients may behave differently. The more additives, flavorings, fruits, or other ingredients that are introduced, the more variables enter the equation. That's why pure honey is the true star of this story. At this point, we can finally answer the mystery. Honey doesn't last forever because it's magical. It doesn't last forever because it's artificial. It lasts because nature accidentally created one of the most effective food preservation systems ever discovered. The bees reduce moisture. The sugars become highly concentrated. The acidity increases. Protective compounds are formed. Together, these factors create conditions that prevent most spoilage organisms from thriving. In a way, honey is a masterpiece of natural engineering. Every spoonful represents thousands of years of evolution, and one of nature's most impressive achievements. The next time you see a jar of honey sitting on a grocery store shelf, you'll know there's much more to it than sweetness. Inside that jar is a food that has fascinated scientists, historians, archaeologists, and consumers for centuries. And unlike many foods in your kitchen, it's probably not in a hurry to expire. So what is the final answer to the mystery of honey? Honey can remain edible for extraordinarily long periods because it contains very little water, extremely high sugar levels, natural acidity, and compounds that discourage microbial growth. Together, these characteristics create an environment where spoilage becomes extremely difficult. That's why honey has earned its reputation as one of the most durable foods on Earth. If you enjoyed uncovering this fascinating food mystery, please like this video, subscribe to Consumer's Choice Top 5, and share it with someone who loves surprising food facts. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what's the oldest jar of honey you've ever seen or eaten? Would you try honey that was 100 years old? We can't wait to read your answers. Thanks for watching, and please check out our previous videos.